Okay. So, well, hello and welcome to the launch of Nature of Being, edited by Linda Hartley, published by Handsprings Publishings, and is a collection of writings and artwork by 21 practitioners from the Institute for Integrative Bodywork and Movement Therapy, or IBMT. I'm Penny Collinson, and together with Mari Winkleman, we're going to be hosting this event. We're both practitioners of the Institute of IBMT, and we're contributors to the book as well. So in a moment, I'm going to introduce Linda Hartley and the schedule for tonight. But firstly, just a couple of housekeeping things, seeing as we're on Zoom. So,
Annie, we've lost your sound.
Thank you. Am I back? Yeah, great. Okay, so just to ask that you remain muted until there's an opportunity for feedback and questions towards the end. Do put responses and questions in the chat if you wish to. We'll be checking those as we go through the evening. Feel free to have your camera on or off, whichever is best for you. And as I said, we're recording this event just so that we can pass it on to people who have been unable to come. And we reckon the event's going to last approximately an hour. Okay. So just give me a second, sorry. So the schedule for the evening will begin with an introduction to the book by Linda. We'll then have a few words by Claire Wilson from Handspring Publishings. Claire will include information about how to buy the book and to use a discount code. Linda will then invite a few of the book's contributors to speak briefly about their chapter by way of giving you a taste of what to expect. I will then invite feedback and questions in response before Linda closes the event. So I'd now like to just introduce Linda. Linda is a deeply respected elder in the field of somatic movement education and therapy. Martha Eddy writes in her foreword to this new book that Linda has been birthing newness for decades and midwifing embodied shifts in consciousness through her books and educational systems. Linda's early background was in dance and choreography. She'd studied at Dartington College of Arts in the late 70s, where she'd been inspired by the somatic dance approach of release work by her teacher, Mary O'Donnell Fulkerson. After further training with Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen in the USA, Linda practiced as a somatic movement therapist and educator and has since taught for numerous organisations in the UK and Europe. Linda holds an MA in somatic psychology, is a certified practitioner and teacher of body-mind centering, an accredited transpersonal psychotherapist, and has studied the discipline of authentic movement with Janet Adler for many years. The study of process-oriented psychology with Arnold Mindell and colleagues also deeply influences her work. For 30 years, she has practiced as a somatic and transpersonal psychotherapist, though she has now stepped down from this thread of her work. As founding director of the Institute for Integrative Bodywork and Movement Therapy, Linda has run training programs since 1990, first in Germany, then England, and currently also in Lithuania and Russia. IBMT is an approved training program of the International Somatic Movement Education and Therapy Association, or ISMETA, and she is now in a gradual process of handing over the running of these programs to a team of IBMT teachers and organisers. Linda is an exceptional writer of fiction and non-fiction, articles and chapters, and has authored several books, which I'm sure we have many of them. So Linda, so those of us who have studied with you, some for many years, are truly grateful for the gift of your teaching and mentoring, which has brought healing and growth, transforming our lives and the work we offer to others. Thank you so much. going to hand over to you to introduce your latest book.
Oh, thank you, Penny. It is so wonderful to see so many of you that I've known over the years, and also some that I haven't yet met. Thank you for joining us. It feels like a special moment. I'm so excited about this book. It felt, I was thinking about where the seeds of this book came from, and over the 30 plus years that I've been running these programs and gradually handing over to other faculty, 32 years now. So many times I would be reading the papers of the students thinking, oh, this is such good material. It needs a wider audience. And that was just a wish at that time. But I think that was the seed of this book. And then it germinated, and as things do in a dark and hidden place. And I don't know how it quite happened, but one day it just became really clear that I wanted to create a book of writings from some of the practitioners of IBMT. So that's somehow how this idea was conceived. So from that early seed. And when I invited the practitioners of IBMT, the graduates from the program, over many generations and all of the different programs, I wanted them to have freedom to write from their own interests, their own passion, their skills and experience, rather than prescribing something. So I didn't have a clear structure in mind. I had a sense of what might come back, but what came back was so full of surprises. It was very exciting for me to receive the contributions, the proposals and the contributions, and the diversity of expressions of this practice. And most of the contributors write about different ways that they're applying IBMT in their own chosen field of practice. So for some that's educational, for some that's therapeutic, for some that's creative work, dance, art, theatre. So all of those aspects, and writing, we have some poems in the book too. I think all of those aspects are represented in this collection, and it's a little small glimpse of the many ways everyone expresses this work in a very unique way. So those of you here at this meeting who are also IBMT practitioners, I know you're each offering something very unique, but I hope you feel somehow a little bit of what you offer is at least hinted at, if not wholly represented here. I think there's a great diversity of practices. So a rich tapestry that I think we've created. And I just want to say at the heart, I feel, although they're very diverse and different, I feel that there are core principles of our work that run throughout the chapters. And I would say that, well, obviously one is the very attentive listening to the body, tracking what we sense and feel, the images, the stories, the relational patterns, the conditioning that we recognize as we enter our body, our somatic experience. So that's obviously at the core of our practice. So that's very present throughout the chapters in different ways. Compassionate witnessing, and quite a number of the contributors write specifically about authentic movement, which is one of the key core elements of IBMT practice. The others are, of course, body-mind centering and somatic psychology. I think the process of learning to trust and follow a process of stepping into not knowing, being courageous enough to stay with processes until some insight is revealed as part of our practice is very, very present in the book, in many of the chapters here. And which has always felt really important to me, the deepening connection to ourself that these practices, all of these core elements of our practice can enable, that allow, invite, cultivate authentic expression. And I think we see that particularly in some of the creative offerings that are in the book. So I'll just say briefly, we begin. It was very clear to me reading the chapters. I could have started in many different ways, but I wanted to start. There are 4 beautiful chapters in the first section that give us a sense of the wider context of somatic work and its place in a global context where we are facing many crises on many different levels. So the first 4 contributors: body, earth, nature, and connection, write and express creatively around these themes. So I wanted to set this greater context so that our work can be seen within a bigger framework. And I do feel somatic work has been developing, often in kind of quite close and maybe sometimes quite inward looking circles, but I have the feeling it's just ready to blossom out into the world and find its real place and value. I hope that's not wishful thinking. That's my intuition, my sense of readiness, and the generation that all of you are part of are the ones that are now ready to make this big leap. In the next section, we look at embryology and from different perspectives, and then birth and the developmental process and therapeutic applications, educational applications of the developmental process. So we have 6, 7 different contributors writing from really different perspectives. Some are exploring from their very personal experiences. Some are writing about their professional practice and theory integrated, and some are expressing in creative ways. There's a lovely dance sequence from Frauke in the embryology section. So there, the body-mind centering work, and particularly the developmental work, which is an important foundation of what we do, is very much a core foundation of that part. And then we have 2 sections on therapeutic applications and looking from different perspectives, integrating with psychotherapy practice and theory, rebalancing the autonomic nervous system through somatic work, and 3 different approaches to working with trauma through a body work and somatic trauma therapy perspective, through authentic movement, and through theatre. So there's 2 sections of applications. And then the final section invites the reader into the work of 3 dance artists, and who are researching the interface between somatic movement and dance, and interesting questions around the relationship between education, therapy, artistic and spiritual practice come up through their research explorations. So I really hope there's something in all of that that would interest or inspire you, want you to read a bit more. So yeah, wonderful. I have enjoyed this process so much, and really so grateful to all of the contributors to this book. They've worked very hard, putting their experience and their skills, translating from the somatic into language. It's not always easy, but I think they've done a wonderful job of doing that. Thank you. I will be back in a moment to introduce some of the contributors, but I'll hand back to Penny.
Thank you, Linda. We're going to go over to Claire Wilson next from Handspring Publishings.
Hi everyone, my name is Claire and I am the editorial director at Handspring Publishers. It's lovely to see you all and meet you. It's a great honour for us at Handspring and Singing Dragon to have published this book on somatic work by Linda and her contributors. As some of you may know, Handspring was quite recently came into the Singing Dragon publishing family. And this is actually one of our first Handspring books that we're publishing, so we're really excited about that. I'm delighted to be doing so. We're very excited about what the book will achieve in its aims to create pathways to change through integrative bodywork and movement therapy. And as Martha Eddy says in her foreword to the book, I'm going to quote a little bit, through myriad paths, this book provides a tending toward what is still somewhat unknown. It offers gateways to new routes, like neural circuits being set down and through practice becoming habituated. It communicates new possibilities for artists, educators, and therapists. New circuits are laid out through thought patterns, sensory experiences, and movement responses. I'd also like to let all of the attendees at this event know how to buy the book. So it can be purchased through the Handspring website, and I'm going to put the web address in the chat so that you can easily access that. We're also offering a 20% discount, and I'll put a code for the discount into the chat as well. That code will be live until the end of July, so you can use it anytime between now and the end of July, and it will be, it's an international code, so wherever in the world you are logging in from to the website, the code will be able to be used. So yeah, that's kind of everything from me that I wanted to let you know about, and I'll put those links into the chat in just a moment. So I'm going to pass back to Linda to introduce the next speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. Lovely to have you with us. I'll try to be brief. The first contributor is Mari Winkleman, who is going to speak a little bit about her chapter Gaia Body, which is the first chapter in the book. She weaves together her passion for somatic movement practice with her very strong commitment towards environmental and social justice. And I think she does this in such a beautiful and brilliant way and introduces this wider context that I was talking about for somatic practice in this time of global crises. Thank you, Mari. Over to you.
Thank you, Linda. It's really wonderful to be here with everybody, and I feel very nervous. So my heart's thudding away and my partner is holding my feet, which is a wonderful support for me right now, and a gift from this training, really. When you say, Linda, about weaving these themes around the embodiment training and then coming into the world with a deeper sensitivity and a greater support to look out and see what's there and feel what's there, as we were writing the chapters, it was the pandemic was upon us. And yeah, there was that time where we turned inward, and it was a time to turn inward and try to make sense of where I've come from in this training, which has meant so much to me. Because I was drawn to Linda's work originally when I read her book, Somatic Psychology and Body, Mind and Meaning. And I was a bit lost in my life. But your writing, Linda, met me in my curiosity and drew me in to the sense of what my body could be if my mind was more awake, or if I was more willing to feel the sensitivity that would come. And when you spoke just now about the attentiveness to process and, you know, holding space for the answers to be revealed, I feel like that is what happens at birth. And we have to stay with the process of birthing, and it can be a struggle and it can be painful at times, but ultimately a being is born, and then yeah, the wonder begins and the inquiry begins. And I feel like this journey has begun me in the inquiry towards deeper truth about who I am, and therefore how I can be in the world at this time. So I talk about this in my chapter. I talk about my arrival on the diploma and what I was seeking, and also some of the struggles that I went through to really embed myself in the work. And it took me 6 years to do the diploma. So it's a long process of waiting for the answers and journeying deeper towards living more openly and in relationship with my peers on the course and with you, Linda. And I just felt like that relational listening was always there, the curiosity, the not knowing. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as 2 years has passed since we began writing the chapter to this evening, a lot has also changed. And my learning has deepened. And if I were to write the chapter again, I would write it with the learning that's occurred in the last 2 years as well, around what it is to be white, what it is to be in a capitalist global north country economy, what it is to be a woman in these times, and what it is to be a queer woman, a woman who doesn't conform to all the patriarchal norms. And I feel prepared. I feel the ground of IBMT has prepared me to deepen into these inquiries and to write more and to bring it into my therapy work and to bring it into some of the groups that I've been running. So I speak very much in my chapter about my relationship between the IBMT journey and some of the experiences with Extinction Rebellion, for instance, where the Red Rebels paraded through. I was one of those Red Rebels at a time. An authentic movement really supported me in being interoceptive and proprioceptive as I gazed out into the world, and that had a dramatic effect. I raised some of the paradoxes which arise when a human being wakes up to their sensitivity and is as a social, cultural being as well, how we navigate these constructs, and how I began to question my navigating as I deepened sensitivity into my body systems and into the organismic sense of self. To be published in a book is a huge privilege, and I wanted to make the most of it. I wanted to be able to convey some of this learning and some of this truth. And I struggled at times, struggled to fit the parameters of time into the parameters of a page. I also made a short film with some local movers, which is signposted at the end of the chapter, about what it is to deepen into the nature in body. So I keep living with the inquiry that IBMT has catalyzed for me. I keep struggling. I keep staying with. I've been in this relationship with this community for over a decade now, and I keep coming back. It can feel difficult to stay with simple truths sometimes in this complex being that is human. We began as a single cell, and we became complicated. It can feel difficult to come to simple truths in the separation that we that we go through, separation from mother's body, separation from nature into human society at times, particularly in the capitalist North. So I want to read an extract from my chapter, which I hope can illustrate something fundamental from what I've just shared, which currently feels a little bit muddled. That's just my anxious body. It's okay. It's finding freedom in movement. As we come into the world, we are allowed a certain amount of freedom just to be ourselves, as long as our needs are met well enough by our carers, parents, and our environments. Increasingly, in a more crowded and ideologically polarized world, less freedom is allowed for each of us, and it is only the ones who can be independent of culture or systems who can explore this freedom. Being ourselves involves authentic and self-regulating movement in our bodies, which comes from connection to our needs, desires, and ideas. Freedom to move is essential for our health and well-being. Interestingly, often on retreat or vacation, we're drawn to nature and draw closer to our animal nature, closer to the ground. I remember vividly my grief in remembering my animal ancestry and my embodied biography, coming to terms with how my biography impacted on my animal nature, suppressing my wild nature. My liberation was through devoted practice in the infant movement development module and repeating the developmental vertebrate, reptilian, and mammalian movement sequences until they felt more natural to me. Dr. Daniel Stern researched and wrote about the development of the human nervous system and the sense of self, and he situated the formative interrelationship of movement and mind centrally in this process of development. Since we know about neuroplasticity as an inherent capacity in our nervous system, we know that revisiting these stages can identify and rework our stuck or harmful patterns of sensing and moving, and we can take part in reforming our own mind as we live on. As Hartley has written, where movement is both free and integrated, there life will be felt to flow freely and strongly. This freedom and integration is a gift of our journey, as we explore in detail this complex and wondrous body, our life force, and thus our essential wisdom become more available to us. And Linda, you wrote that in 1995. So that's just a short extract from my chapter, and I really hope you'll enjoy reading it. And I know it's amongst so many beautiful chapters that I've begun to delve into since I got my copy, and I'll just extend my gratitude again to all of you who I've been learning with, and all my clients and students and friends and peers and my family. My beloved sister is here tonight. So thank you so much. Over to you, Penny. Oh, to Linda, whoever's next.
Thank you, Mari. Thank you so much for that. And what you just read feels like a good introduction to the next person who I'm going to ask to speak, which is Heike. I think Heike's here. The development of movement and the self. And Heike, who specializes in leading groups for children and their caregivers, as well as being on the faculty of the Somatische Academy, probably not pronouncing that properly, in Berlin. So she describes in her chapter, outlines the developmental movement process and some of the theory and practical applications of this, and its importance for the development of the infant and child. So Heike, would you like to speak a little bit about your chapter?
Yeah, thank you, Linda. And yeah, my name is Heike, and I use the pronoun she, her. And yeah, you already introduced me. I also work in the field of dance and movement, and you pronounce it well, Somatische Akademie. Actually, we are right here, finishing a class, so there are more people with me in this room. And as I thought it's easier to speak about the chapter just sharing some parts, so I will read it. So the developmental movement patterns, DMPs, I will name them like that, are sequences of patterns that a baby needs to learn and go through in first 2 years of life in order to arrive into standing and walking. And Linda wrote in her book, the developmental patterns in turn underlie all human movement possibilities, from the positions we adopt while sleeping to the way we hold a pen or perform the most intricate dance movements. And that was in 1995. So a long time ago, and still it's true. So as human development occurs through a dialogue between nature and nurture, we create compensatory patterns. But when we know how the DMPs work, we can also support others in releasing those compensatory patterns and find more efficiency in movement. And especially when we do that while they are still learning and growing. So especially in the first years of life, movement and experience form the brain's connectivity and plasticity. So they also are formed while the child is still in a non-verbal place. So that means also that the child will later on not be able to name what happened, but this is like be read in the body. So also the DMPs, they form the foundations of ourself, and that does not mean they form our identity. We can change our identity, but this grounding, this is in us and this is in our self. So also the child develops in the dialogue with the caregiver. So all the sensations and movements by the caregivers, they form the brain's connectivity and connections. And then Stern, which was mentioned already by Mari, he says, like, languages causes a split in the experience of the self, because language comes in later. It's a moment when we, and now I have lost where I was, when it moves from the relatedness to the impersonal. And that is very important, because with the language we can move with our mind everywhere, but what is before is in the body. So a sense of self, a sense of what and who is me, and what and who is not me, is of importance in development. It is through that relationship that the forming of the brain and the sense of self is occurring. And Daniel Siegel, who researched a lot about the brain, he writes, interpersonal experience plays a special organizing role in determining the development of brain structures early in life and the ongoing emergence of brain functions throughout the lifespan. So when a teacher has an understanding of the DMPs, they can notice and analyze the child's movement and see how best to support the child with activities and exercises. So a child that has certain tension patterns will try to compensate in order to be like others and in order to fulfill the tasks. So when the teachers sees it, it can support them. So Linda also writes a lot about an uncompleted or weak pattern that has developed early on will be underlying and then produce a weak upcoming pattern. So if we go back to the DMPs later on, we can support the repatterning of that weak pattern. So in my chapter, I also write about these group activities where I specialize on bringing also contact improvisation to tall and small. So bringing touch and play, so it's not completely contact improvisation, so maybe some of you are familiar to contact improvisation, which is a dance practice that also evolved in the 1970s, and it's a lot about a physical point of contact that then moves around, and also it's a play with gravity. But of course, when it is done with small people and big people, there are very different relationships. So contact improvisation for tall and smalls offers us a space where everyone can learn to feel themselves, to deal with themselves, and to encounter the other at an eye level from that very personal connection. And it offers the possibility of a temporary suspension of the normal fixed role distributions for caregivers and children. Of course, as parents, and probably some of you are caregivers or parents, you have a certain role and responsibility. And in coming to the class of contact improvisation for tall and small, there's this moment of really going and sensing your body. And this is really the core of what we also did in the training with Linda. And then really releasing, and from that coming to yourself, going into a connection with a child, while the child naturally is moving and playing around, but also telling the parent to, or caregiver to do this and that. But then in that class, the parent can really listen and start, okay, what kind of dialogue can happen in that moment? And so that negotiation process is happening on a physical level and not on the verbal level. And that is very important, and it's very difficult, and it's very complex. So it's also my role as a teacher to always remind them, so actually, what are they feeling in their body? I mean, now after 2 years of Corona, it's very different than when I started to write that chapter. I haven't been giving these, especially these classes, because we had these lockdowns and you never know when it comes back. But you can really see in other classes like how much they are lacking this physical contact, but also how much in the caregivers children's class that now I teach, like you can really see that the children, they have it back. Like when they move, they learn quickly, but the parents, they hold back. So bringing them down to the floor, working them with the DMPs is really a way how they can find that really inner sense of self back, that then allows them to come back into relationship with the world and with other people. So there's a lot more in that chapter, and it's more complex. I also talk a lot about the brain and how the brain develops in dialogue with movement. And I just got my copy of the book yesterday, so I had no time to read it, but I had it in my hand and I was really excited. So I'm also really excited to hear more from other contributors. Thank you so much for having this book launch.
Thank you, Heike, for sharing a little bit about your chapter. I'm going to move on now to Penny, who you've already met. Her chapter, Mother Witness, Revisiting Rupture at Birth Through Somatic Movement Practice. Penny is a leader in the UK field of somatic movement, a former director of the UCLan Danson's Somatic Wellbeing MA program. I hope that's correct. And in this chapter, she's sharing a very intimate account of a journey of creative immersion as she seeks to uncover and heal the impacts of what was a traumatic birth for herself and her daughter. So I will let Penny speak a little bit about her contribution there.
Thank you. I've written this chapter, I've described it as a story that acknowledges the lived experience of a birth is a return to birthing and describes the journey afterwards. So it's a chapter really about connection. It speaks of what happened and what did not happen, and the importance of that for mother and baby. And I explore this chapter in these themes are sort of explored through 3 key periods of time. The first one is an exploration in the studio during my training. The second are reflections of my daughter's actual birth. And the third is a creative process many years later, where I realize I need to hand back over to my body for guidance and healing. So in short, the chapter begins in the studio. And it recounts a process which took place during my training, focusing awareness on the uterus. This was through a hands-on partner exploration. And I'd had my second baby, Stella, 4 months earlier, and was aware that this exploration could reveal body memories, that it could reveal emotions and feelings and associations held within my tissues, and that might be brought to consciousness. But what made it remarkable was that it unexpectedly involved the participation of Stella. So her spontaneous responses throughout that exercise really played a profound part in what unfolded. And in the chapter, I refer back to journals at the time, of writing at the time, and this is one of the paragraphs I put in. My partner moves her hand to the area of my womb. We both breathe and settle our focus here. She says to Stella, "This is your first home." In that instance, Stella responds with short breaths and sighs and squeals. She's talking to us. Over the coming minutes, her sound and movements escalate in volume and size. They are relentless. I try to soothe her through feeding, holding her closer. I move her to the other breast. She sucks and gulps, throwing back her head, kicking legs and squeezing hands. Nothing seems to console her, and she becomes more and more troubled, sucking for sustenance from my breasts as though her life depended on it. So this is just one of the descriptions about the studio experience. And after the experience had come to an end, so when the actual exercise had come to an end, we went into verbal tracking back through with my partner what had emerged. And in doing so, that's when I reflected on Stella's actual birth. And so the next part of my chapter goes on to talk about the birth as I recalled it. And her birth involved a cesarean section, which came about because there were signs of her becoming more distressed in the womb. Her heart rate was decreasing. And after some time, it was decided that we needed to, as they say, we needed to get her out. This was 13 years ago, and yet over the years, I've carried a lot of distress from that experience, and I was confused. Why? What was it? And every time I thought about it, I cried. It was very emotional still for me. So I decided it was time to ask my body what she knows, what she feels. So this became a 4-week creative process that involved a stilling, sensing, moving, touching, imaginative dialogue with my womb, what I call a process of embodied imagination, and journaling in response. And in the chapter, you'll see that there are 10 extracts from this process. There was so much work, so much writing, but I extracted down to 10 pieces, of which the themes of body and birthing and relationship emerged. Then the rest of the chapter considers, I suppose, overarching insights from this creative inquiry. And some of those things reflect back on, for example, how the process brought about personal healing. But I think also how it reinforced how our presence interlinks, our presence with others interlinks on silent, felt levels where we pulsate. I've put in my book, receiving and responding to one another in known and unknown ways. And then it goes on to reflect on the studio experience with Stella, that I have a curiosity to know that if a baby can be part of an experience in such a fluid, spontaneous and effective way, is it that our training in perceptual awareness is not so much about learning, but noticing what is blocking or hindering our innate abilities to connect, communicate and interact? So these are some of the questions that are coming through the chapter. I'll finish there. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Penny, for that wonderful synopsis. Really gives a sense of your chapter. Jane Akondo has written about somatic bodywork and movement approaches to trauma. Jane is an IBMT faculty member, currently teaching in all 3 of our programs and co-director of the UK program. She's trained in several disciplines of embodied practice, and in this chapter she describes her way of integrating the somatic experiencing work of Peter Levine's work with IBMT practice in addressing trauma with her clients. I think that would be a fair summary, Jane, of what you're writing about.
Yeah.
Jane, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah. Yes, I think that's a very fair description. As I found that I studied somatic experiencing after I'd finished the IBMT training, and I found I was so grateful that I did it that way round, because so much of what we learn in IBMT is such a resource and such a grounding. And I hear of each of you that speak how incredibly nourishing and how much the work really touches some of those earlier woundings or interruptions. So really, when I did the somatic experiencing training, it was where I really got present to the depth of what we cover and what we learn in our work in IBMT. So really why I'm passionate about this particular topic and wanted to write about it is because there's not in that world of the somatic experiencing and even some of the hands-on work with trauma that I've learned, there isn't that much about movement. And so knowing what we do with movement and how impactful it is in integrating and getting to know ourselves deeper is I think it was you, Linda, said getting to meet yourself more deeply, getting to know yourself more deeply. I wanted to begin to bridge that meeting of the trauma work with movement work, which I think all of us are doing, in fact, but it's actually to write about it explicitly. So I'm going to read just a little bit, a quote from Peter Levine, who was interviewed by Dr. Aileen Lapere. And he writes, or he says, emotion intelligence is only part of the story. The big other part is about the body's sensibility, what we can learn from our bodies, what kind of messages it holds. The body holds a tremendous amount of wisdom, not just for healing from trauma, but tremendous wisdom, because when we connect to our visceral self, to our primary instinctual centers, we connect with source. And this felt such a kind of a weaving of what we do in IBMT. But I wanted to read one other piece, which is from an experience I had on the IBMT training, which was it was probably one of the most profound experiences I've had, and that I didn't even know about until it had happened. And so it's what it's drawing from is in somatic experiencing, they work with what they call a trauma vortex and a counter vortex. And the counter vortex is like kind of working with resource energy, which some of you are probably familiar. And the trauma vortex is where we go into the interruption, or where we go into something that really sticks and we can't quite integrate the process. And so when I'm going to read this little bit, when I was training in IBMT, I had some extraordinary experiences that expressed how we work with this vortex and counter vortex. So it was on a weekend. It was actually the birth weekend, which all of you who studied will know, where we were working with pre-spinal and spinal movement patterns, coming from the more fluid to the gravitational environment, to meet the underlying motility of this deep instinctual knowing that lives in each of us. As we moved, we awakened the potential of inhabiting these gestures that live deep in our biological intelligence. And I go on. And what I came across was that as I came out, like my eyes had cleared something. And I hope it's okay to say, but Paul was my birth partner, and my eyes just wanted to take him in. I had these wide open eyes, and I just wanted to gaze. And it was like that bonding pattern that I had interrupted in my birth. So what I realized was emerged was an insight that at my birth, there was a concern as to whether I would survive. I could feel my eyes releasing the shock at witnessing fear in those who I gazed at in the moments after I was born. It was through my eyes were utterly thirsty for taking in and absorbing a deeper connection. I could feel this instinctual urge to bond, to receive a transmission. It was such an extraordinary experience, and let me taste how profound somatic movement work is in touching into our deep body wisdom. And it went on for days. If those I was close to, I just had this really clear gaze that just wanted to soak people up. And I realized it was that this contraction of being met by fear was, like not how I wanted to enter the world. And so it was this undoing, which for me just gives a little taste of like how somatic work and going to that deeper layer of what is available can come through. So then I carry on in the book and I give examples of how I then work with movement with clients, and how it comes through, and how the movement really becomes the ground and the awareness in the body practices. So yeah, there's some nice ones that work about the nervous system and about somatic psychology and the meaning that comes through. And yeah, so I'm going to leave it as a little taste to carry on. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Thank you to hear that. Finally, Dasha, all the way from Moscow, I think, is going to read us the poem, introduce her chapter and read us a poem that she finishes. Her chapter is called Circle, the Nature of Containment. Dasha is a psychotherapist and psychologist. And in her chapter, she explores the archetypal nature of the circle and brings together ideas about the psychotherapeutic understanding of holding and containment, the cellular holding in the body and places in the body where we find containment, structures in the body, the witness circle in authentic movement, which offers another perspective on containment, and the mandala method. So Dasha, if you'd like to say briefly a few words and share your poem. And I invited Dasha, if you would like to also speak it in Russian, that's entirely up to you, if that would be helpful for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. You introduced my chapter so well. And I just want to add a little bit that the poem I'm going to read is about my witnessing experience. And I wrote it during my training program when I was studying. And it was during the Authentic Movement module. So I think I will read the poem in English and in Russian because it was written in Russian originally. And I would like you to hear this melody of the language. It was written at first. And then I translated it into English to put it in a chapter about containment. So I start my poem here. I see you, the river, I see. Your waters falling into the stream, playful glare, a gentle wave, how fearlessly you lift the sand from the bottom. I am your riverside. I am always here, calm and still. I see you, the seed. I feel there is a power of a huge tree in you. It is folded into a spiral, into a small dot in a space and time. I'm your shell. I hug you tightly and confidently until you want to sprout. I will wait with you in the darkness of the earth. I see you, the body, blood, muscles, organs, your dance, your breath, every cell, every form and matter of yours. I'm here, all with you, naked. All masks are ripped off. I'm your skin. I'm the impartial spectator of your divine mystery. I'm the womb, I'm the grave, I'm the circle, I'm a living cell membrane. I see you freezing and moving, your unconditional happiness, boredom, hope, shame, wounds. I hear all your songs. I'm the witness of life, and in your presence, I am with my own experience. And now I will read it in Russian. Я вижу тебя, река, я вижу твои воды, срывающиеся в поток, игривые блики, нежную волну, на дне золотой песок. Я твой берег, я всегда тут, спокоен, недвижим. Я вижу тебя, зерно, твою силу огромного дерева, свернутую в спираль, в маленькую точку пространства и времени. Я твоя скорлупа, обнимаю тебя крепко и уверенно. Пока не захочешь прорасти, я с тобой буду ждать в темноте земли. Я вижу тебя тело, кости, кровь, мышцы, органы, твой танец, твое дыхание, каждую клетку, каждую форму и материю. Я с тобой целиком, как есть, обнажена, все маски сорваны. Я твоя кожа, я беспристрастный свидетель твоей божественной мистерии. Я утроба, я матка, я круг, я клетки мембрана. Я вижу, как ты замираешь и движешься. Я слышу твоих песен тропы, твое безусловное счастье, скуку, надежду, стыд, раны. Я свидетель жизни, и в твоем присутствии я проживаю свой опыт. Thank you. It was so nice to read the poem here.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear it also in the Russian, the rhythm, the musicality of it. Thank you so much. A lovely way to finish our little presentation. Thank you, all five of you. I just want to say there are a number of other contributors here who aren't speaking today. And before I pass back to Penny, can I just invite you to put your screen on gallery and just invite all the contributors who haven't spoken just to give us a little wave so people can see who you are. I think it'd be really nice to see everybody. That's wonderful. There's so much talent here. Thank you, everyone. That's wonderful. I'm going to pass back to Penny. We have gone over time a little bit. Maybe those who want to stay, we'll have a little question and feedback time for a few minutes. I leave that to you, Penny.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, we are going over time a little, and I think if we could take some more time, that would be lovely, but understand, as Linda says, if you need to go. But thank you so much for being here. There's opportunity to put thoughts in the chat. I'm going to ask you to put your hand up for if you have a question, you know, the little yellow hand or something like that, or wave. We're just going to have to go for a few questions, but maybe there's something that you want to reflect on that you've heard, or a question that you have. Just checking if anybody's on the second page. Yes, Ishra, would you like to speak?
Hello, everybody. Actually, I don't know what I'm going to quite say, but I feel there's something wanting to bubble out. I've just completed my master's from UCLan, and I was fortunate to be one of the last members of that cohort that Penny was head of the course of. I just found that I just felt so connected today from what everybody was saying. There were bits from what you all were sharing that I had experienced through my course and post-course, where there were moments of feeling lost and isolated and wondering, what is coming up? What is happening in body? What is body revealing? But I'm feeling so reassured and nurtured by hearing the sharings of what you've all been expressing, because I resonate with, like I say, you know, little puzzles, little bubbles, little snippets. So just thank you so much for that. Just want to express appreciation and connection and resonance with this work. I love it. And Linda, thank you so much for your books. I have dipped in and out of them so much throughout my assignments, as Penny will, you know, witness. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ish. Okay. Okay. Well, maybe we're just really enjoying having experienced it, and there's been some lovely things coming through in the chat about your feelings of hearing and listening, and the poignancy of personal stories. And yeah, It's just very nice to be with each other in the silence too, isn't it?
And there's a lot being spoken into the chat as well. I'm seeing, I don't know if everybody can see that. Some lovely comments and
So Linda, I'd like to pass back to you then, if you feel as you know, to close our event. Maybe there's other things that you want to bring out. Let's have some time.
Oh, I feel so full that there's not really much more I can say. It's such a deep pleasure to see you all and hear from some of you and celebrate this wonderful work that 21 of you, but I feel somehow representing many more in our communities. And Ishrat, thank you. You're part of our wider community through your studies with Penny. So yes, I'm just very touched by all that's been shared and by the presence of each of you here this evening. Thank you for coming. Shall we make a circle or on a tradition? Those who wish to. Yeah. And I hope some of you will feel moved to buy the book and enjoy it. Thank you. And thank you so much to Penny and Mari, who have enabled us to get together in this way, or organize this meeting this evening. I couldn't do that without them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Maybe you want to unmute and just say goodbye or just disappear if that's what you prefer to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Monica.
Hi, Maren.
Sasha, thank you. Raima, welcome. Martha.
Oh, bye-bye. Can't wait to get my hands on the book. Bye-bye.
Boy.